right, everyone. So today we're doing another Coffee with Coaches video. So if anyone has been following this hashtag, you definitely know that what I'm trying to do is talk more about the coaching profession as a whole and show all the different facades of coaching, the different types of coaching. And I am specifically highlighting the top of the line. So I'm very honored that Kristin Sherry has accepted to have this interview with me today. So if you don't know Kristin, you definitely should, because she is amazing. So she has this book that everything's founded on. I know I have to give you. Oh, there we go. Yeah. YouMap. And I'm going to be doing a book write-up about this, guys. So follow me if you want to know more about her book. But we've got her in person. So here's the author of YouMap and the founder of the YouMap method, right? You've really branded it.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Kristin. Your book is phenomenal, and I think that you've touched on all the main points of leadership and personal growth and professional growth. And so tell me a little bit about how you came across the idea to write this book, because the book ties really into your whole coaching philosophy. So
Yeah. So I had a different reason for each book that I wrote. I wrote my first book to honor my mother, who is still alive. Everyone thinks it was a memorial book, but no. So I wrote my first book. It was a career empowerment book for women, and I wrote it to honor my mother, and I released it on Mother's Day. I wrote my second book because I kept getting a lot of questions about interviewing and how to interview on LinkedIn, and instead of just answering them over and over, I threw together a book. And then YouMap I wrote because it really broke my heart when people needed my coaching process and couldn't afford it. So I wrote YouMap to make it available to anyone.
I love that. And so before besides your authoring, were you already coaching? So you said YouMap was to make it more affordable for people who couldn't afford the one-on-ones. So how long have you been coaching overall?
I get asked that question a lot, and it's really difficult because I was raised by an executive coach. My mother is an executive coach and has been before it had that title. And so I was raised by a coach and taught how to coach. And so I always coached as a manager, for example. So I would do workshops and goal planning and development plans and mentoring and assessments. I learned how to use assessments at a young age. And so I've always done it even when I wasn't a coach. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very difficult for me to say when I started, because if you talk to people who reported to me, a decade ago, I was coaching them and coaching other people in the organization informally. And I was certified as a coach in 2007 by my company to coach employees in the organization. So I suppose from a official credential, it would be 12 years.
Wow, that's impressive. And what's even more impressive is that your mother is a coach, because part of the reason I'm doing this video series, Coffee with Coaches, is that it seems that there's a lot of confusion about what is a coach. Should you pay for a coach, or is a coach always free? So I've heard the weirdest stories, and I thought it really shows that it's not a broadly known term. Like, what does a coach do? So that's what I want to lead into, since you obviously know. What in your opinion is a real coach? Like the real definition.
Yeah, so coach is someone who comes alongside another person and helps them reach goals. So you have life coaches who help people reach their life goals. You have sports coaches who help people reach their physical goals, or their goals around their sport. And of course, you have executive coaches who help executives reach their goals for their career, and career coaches who help people figure out where they fit, how to land a job, whatever. So I started out doing actually executive coaching in the corporate world and fell in love with job seekers. And so I started being a career coach, and I've really shifted into a consultant at this point, because I now certify people to be career coaches. Mm-hmm. And so the difference between a coach and a consultant, of course, is the coach is trying to draw out from the person through questioning strategies, and really a consultant comes with the expertise, and they direct you. So I have a mix of coaching and consulting. I do both.
So that's interesting, because you just touched on one of the other issues that I've encountered. So there is a school of thought that a pure coach is not allowed to consult you. So obviously you don't buy into that, right? You mix it up when needed.
It's difficult to be so cut and dry when you're working with the messiness of human beings. Sometimes when I'm coaching people, I have to step in and be a little more directive and give some tough love to my client and tell them the kind of the facts of what like if somebody's trying to go into a profession and they're not suited for it. Sometimes I have to put the consulting hat on and provide some additional suggestions or ideas or what they might do instead, and then shift back into the coach mode. So I do move in and out of coaching and consulting.
Nice. Well, in your book, you really outline a clear method of areas to move through. So it seems like you are not just open-ended coaching, come as you are, and we'll just, I'll just give you advice or help you along. You really have a method that you train your coaches to follow, and that has worked for many candidates, apparently, right?
Yeah, I'm very much a systems person. That's one of the things that I like handles. I like to put handles on things. I like to have clear outcomes and a clear process. And that doesn't mean that I'm rigid in the process, but I find having a framework or a system it helps me from going off the rails, but also provides some level of comfort for the people I work with, because they know what to expect. They can put their mind around the process. It's not an unknown or something that's scary, or what are you going to tell me? Or, it's clear. It provides clarity.
Mm-hmm. Well, a minute ago, you said that dealing with human beings is messy. Obviously, I fully agree. And so that's something that I wanted to ask about is, how do you define the boundaries between career coaching and life coaching? So let's say that you have somebody who approaches you or now one of your trained coaches and says, hey, I'm just looking for a job change. I'm unhappy in my company. Can you help me? But then very quickly you realize that there's some major issues underneath. So are your coaches equipped to change hats from like career coach over to life coaching? Or would you draw a line at that point and say, if it's a big enough issue, I need to refer you to somebody else to deal with it before I can move forward with your career?
So I actually have dealt with that myself, and I deal with that in the ethics module of my coaching certification because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it depends on the coach. So I have a certified YouMap coach, Lorene, who is a licensed social worker. She has her master's in social work. And so if she wanted to engage a client down that path, she is qualified to do that. But I always tell people in the certification program, you really need to know your limits. Mm-hmm. And not try to go giving advice and counsel around things that you are not qualified to counsel people on. So I've had people who were working with me who had a nervous breakdown and had to go into an institution. I've seen a lot of different things. And so, yeah, it's you don't necessarily have to there's nothing wrong with being a truth teller and saying what you see. I think that maybe there's a core issue at work here. Here's what I've observed. Not making speculation, but it seems like you might benefit from speaking to someone who can help you with XYZ. That's not in my capabilities to help you with. But there's nothing wrong with telling the truth. And if you know people in your network to recommend to, by all means.
Well, the reason I ask that is because, like you said, once you start working with someone, it might not be what meets the eye. So they might come with a request, but very quickly it turns into something much, much bigger. And that's where it seems to be a little bit challenging as a coach to set those boundaries, because obviously as a coach, you're a very strong giver. So you want to fix the person, you want to help them fix themselves. But if you do uncover such a case, then you have to set it up, this isn't quite therapy. This isn't quite like a healing therapy. Although some coaches actually do specialize in that. So I'm going to be talking to other coaches who really get in there deep and have like a whole spiritual soul searching element to it. So I just thought I'd bring that up to see where the boundaries are.
I actually have a master certification in brain-based coaching to help people with limiting beliefs. So when I meet people who have confidence issues or are throwing up barriers to their success, I will address those because I am trained in that.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on the coach and what are your limitations. You need to know your own limitations, but you also need to be clear about the services you do and don't provide up front, rather than just accepting any business that comes your way.
Right. So the example you said earlier of one of your coaches who's also a social worker, she has to make that decision for herself. Is she going to use her social work? And maybe she can't stop because it's in her nature. Like once you have a skill, your hat comes out. Like I'm a mother, right? So in other situations, I'm like, oh, it's cold outside. Here, put on your hat. And
I'm so like that.
And I'm talking to a grown man.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. So that's what I mean.
Not that different.
but making it known, like, and then deciding if those boundaries, if you're willing to do that. I spoke with another coach, for example, who said, I drew the line when my client started calling me on Sunday, talking about ending her life.
Yikes.
So you see, so it can get, I think working with a coach also is very intense for some people. And maybe those self-limiting beliefs go into some past abuse or past trauma. And that's when you crack open this bigger problem where, you may need to ask them to have someone else step in and help deal with some of it. But I think
why people open up like that. You're talking to someone who you perceive has wisdom, empathy, who cares about people. I mean, who is relational to some extent. That's why they're coaching.
right.
So I see why people open up. I don't fault them for that.
Right. So we've just gone through like the breadth of coaching from like, just help me with my resume to like solve my life problems. So that's why I'm doing these calls, because it's just so wide open.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about how does someone go about hiring a coach? Do you have any advice for somebody who's like thinking of hiring a new coach, where to go and how to vet them and like how to make that decision?
Yeah, I definitely think that you need to know what your outcomes are, because there are a lot of coaches who will say yes to you and bring you on, even though they're not the right person for you, because they want that client.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think you have to be clear on your outcomes. You don't necessarily have to know what service you need, but you know what goal you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And that way people can help. And you're going to waste a lot of time if you're talking to all these coaches and you don't clarify that up front. I have a lot of people who will reach out to me and say, hey, can we have a call? I'm thinking about hiring you. And I won't take the call until I'm sure I'm the right person for them, because I don't want to waste their time either.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll ask some probing questions to figure out where they are. If you were to sit down and have a conversation with someone right now about what your next step is, would you know what that is? And the answer should be no to work with me. I don't write resumes, or I'm not a resume writer, LinkedIn profile writer. I strictly work on the front end of who am I and how do I figure out what my next step should be. And anything beyond that, I have referral partners. So really know what your goals are, even if you don't know what the solution is for the goals, because then that coach can identify if they work with people who have your goals. The other thing is, work with someone you feel comfortable with. You should have chemistry. And I don't mean chemistry like a love connection, of course, but that person makes you feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel, even if you've heard they're the best coach in the world, if you don't click with them and you don't feel comfortable with them, you're going to not have the best experience that you could have as if you are able to feel really comfortable and open up to that person, because you're going to be talking about a lot of personal things, even though it's in the context of career, because you have to have some tough conversations around why you got fired from that last job or whatever you're having to discuss. So you want to have that know, like, and trust factor with the person. And I encourage people to talk to a couple of different coaches. Don't hire the first person that you come across. I actually had someone who hired me because the other coach they looked at put too many exclamation points in their copy on their website. So they went with me. So people have interesting criteria. Yeah.
Well, you're such an amazing person. That's absurd, because you have so much else going for you that they would, it's an honor to work with someone like you. So that is hilarious. That is hilarious to see how little they had thought out the process. So I love your tips. I think
I'll add one more tip. If the person seems like they're trying to shove their process to fit you instead of really being interested in what you need and what your goals are, that's a huge red flag. I meet people all the time who just want to shove people through their process, and it's like doesn't even fit their need. That's no good.
That's very, very good, because I think it could be a combination of a lack of training where they hold on to this one method that they've been taught works, and they don't see the big picture. They don't have the confidence to adjust to the person's needs. Or it could be they don't really care, I mean, sadly, I want to believe that all coaches are really, really giving people. Like, you don't go into coaching if you're not a giving person. Like, you honestly, when I ask coaches, what is your goal? Mostly I hear, I want to help 1 million people, or, so going from that to like, hey, let's get you through the process so I can, process you and get on with the new client. You have to wonder, you're like, are you even, why are you coaching? Right. So that's really valuable feedback. And also you said about collaborating with other coaches. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know Anton Chumak. He is doing something amazing with Coaching Hub that I interviewed him yesterday. And so I think we're going to see a lot of cross collaborations for skill sets that are, my client needs a little bit of sales coaching, or they need a little bit of public speaking coaching, and we're going to work together. So I love this idea of not being like my program fits everyone's needs. And if you don't go somewhere else. And because these clients, like, if I want to hire a coach, I'm kind of in the dark. So I have to, I don't want to hire 10 people and be like, are you my coach? Yeah. So, to have one main coach.
Put together with the whole life care package that I participated in. We kind of did that with Dino Pacella and Thomas Miller and me and Sharon Auckland. It was great. Yeah.
That's the way it should be, right? Because like you said, humans are messy, and we may need just a little tad bit of different skill set coaching to move us mountains towards our goals, while keeping one main coach. This is all very helpful. So this advice for people who are looking for coaching, the last question I'm going to ask you is practical. It's like, so how long does it take? And I know you're going to say it depends, but realistically, I want people to set realistic expectations. So I'm not talking about writing a resume for someone. I'm talking about I'm stuck kind of person, and I don't know where to go next in my career. So would you just hire someone who says, hey, I'll pay you for one session?
Oh, no. No, because there are many facets to a person, and in one session, you can only look at one layer of a person. So that's like YouMap, for example, looks at 4 aspects of a person. It looks at what their natural strengths are, what their values are, the skills they enjoy using, and then what their interests are. So if I only did one session and knew someone's strengths, for example, I have no idea what their values are. So I can't give them good advice. And values violations are one of the number one reasons people are unhappy in their life in general, because their values aren't aligned with their life. And so yikes, no. And with just doing values, I don't know what your talent is to be able to advise you on a career. It takes me 3 weeks to crack that nut and figure out. Sometimes I do it in the first session, believe it or not, when I have enough information. Sometimes it takes me 2, but I always crack the nut by 3.
Awesome. And when you say 3, do you advise a person doing coaching, like this type of coaching, to have a weekly session, or is it once a month? I mean,
yeah, I do weekly. And the reason for that is if you move the sessions too close together, there's not enough time for the reflection. I give them a reflection workbook to work through the insights that we're uncovering together. And I really want them to know them as well as I know them from the assessments and from the conversation, because I have that objective perspective. And so they need to reflect to be able to have that kind of 360 lens of how people see them, as well as aligning that with how they see themselves. And if you move the sessions too far apart, they lose traction, they forget the insights, and they have trouble connecting the dots.
Awesome. No, this is great. And last question, have you ever fired a client? Have you ever had a client who just wouldn't put in the work?
Yes, I've fired clients at the prospect stage, and I fired, so the first client well, it wasn't the first, but I fired sorry. The first, and it's for their best interest. So the one client that I fired was hiring me to work with her daughter, but now Stephanie, who works on my staff, works with students, but I used to work with students.
Okay.
She just didn't present in a trusting way. And she was, I mean, it's okay if people ask for testimonials, I'm fine with that. But there was just a drilling about her that I felt like she started with a position of not trusting me. At least start neutral. And so I said to her that trust is the cornerstone of a coaching relationship. So I felt she should seek out someone that she felt more trusting of, because I don't think it would be a satisfactory process if she didn't feel trust. That's foundational, working with the coach. And then I also fired people who, like you said, they wouldn't do their homework. Not that it's heavy homework, but they would cancel and cancel and cancel calls. And, you know, I have select number of spots open because I do more exclusive coaching now. I don't coach just anyone who comes along. I'm not trying to be elitist, but I have other things that I'm doing as well. So I've narrowed down the number of slots that I will coach people. And so when someone cancels on me, that's quite a lot of lost
it's billable hours. It's
yeah,
billable hours. And even if they had prepaid for it or whatever, they're not putting in the work, and there's your reputation. I mean, you want to see successful outcomes. You don't want to say, I worked with Jenny and now Jenny is unemployed and, you know, not doing well at all. You want to, so it has to go both ways, right? The coaching.
Yeah, most of the clients I work with are really, really great though. I've never had like behavioral issues or conflict or anything like that. It's just people not being committed to the process. And so I've returned people's money and said, you know, when you're ready to invest in this, you know where to find me. But right now I just sense that this isn't a priority, and that's okay. It's your life to set your priorities.
Right. Oh, I love that. It's definitely tough, but I think some tough love goes a long way, because in the end, you're doing them a service.
Absolutely. I don't want them to follow through the process and get nothing out of it. And then that's my reputation as well.
I mean, it's also kind of like people signing up for a gym membership, and then it's like, oh, check, I'm a member of the gym. And then they you know, they stop going, but they still feel that they're doing something good because they have the membership. It's like, guys, you know, don't hire a coach and then flake on your coach, because you're hurting yourself. Ultimately, you have a high level of professionalism and ethics, and you would give the money back, or you would end the relationship. Another coach would be like, you know what, they're paying me anyway, so whatever.
No. Yeah, I don't roll like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no, this has been very, very beneficial. I think that people who are looking to hire a coach now have a better understanding of what's out there and how to do it. And yeah, I mean, do you have any last words to add if for new clients who are like, I need a coach, where should I start?
So I have two pieces of advice. The first is trust your instincts. You may not know all of these things about yourself, but trust your instincts. If someone is trying to guide you down a path that doesn't feel right for you, don't put all your faith in another human and say, well, they're the all-knowing coach. So you have to trust your instincts. It really should be a collaborative partnership when you're working with a coach, and that the advice they give you, the direction they provide, or the things they offer to consider, you need to be on board with those things. So don't let a coach run away with you and put you down a direction that doesn't feel right for you. Trust your own instincts. That's the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is really does that person come across as a giver or a taker? Because there are a lot of people who hang out their shingle who are like, ooh, I'm gonna be a coach, I can make a couple $100 an hour, or whatever their mentality is.
Mm-hmm.
But taker coaches are just awful. I'm just gonna say that right now. They're just awful.
Yeah, no, I agree. And sometimes it's not easy to figure it out. So I think doing, maybe, like what you were saying about wasting time doing these exploration calls. So I guess there's different philosophies. I mean, some coaches immediately are like, set up the free call. I personally like to have a call, but I also am at a different stage than you in my practice, where I'm still seeking out like who I want to coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so having a vetted method of questions and having clear boundaries around what you will or will not coach is key, because we don't want to waste anyone's time. It would be both a time waste on both sides if we don't do it up front.
Well,
So,
what I
yeah.
have is a one-page document that kind of says what the goals that my process, what those goals are, and do they align with your goals, and what that process looks like. And I give a sample YouMap report because I pretty much am a niche coach with YouMap. And so
Yeah.
Stephanie is my client manager, and she's kind of like the front runner with the clients, and she will say, this is the process, this is how it works, here's what the outputs are, what questions do you have? And then they talk to me, or just start with me if they can clearly see the connection. So
Right.
I used to talk to every single person, but I don't anymore, just because I'm a niche coach. Either what I'm doing is right for you or it's not.
Well, I mean, I hate to sound arrogant, but I would just say go read your book, because I mean, the best clients at this point would be people who have read your book. I mean, your book is not expensive. If you're already looking to hire a coach, why not buy their book and read it? Because your niche is so based around this method you've developed. So by reading it, it would be a prerequisite to say, oh my goodness, this is the coach I've been searching for. This method sounds amazing. But I really want to take it one step further and work with her,
Yeah, my current clients are all reading my book, interestingly enough. I used to carry about a 20 to 25 client load at a time, and I've cut it back to 5. I only accept 5 clients at a time now. And so, yeah, every single one of them, I believe that I'm working with right now, is reading it or has read it, which is kind of interesting.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I mean, I'm going to do a separate book review, because YouMap is something everyone needs. I almost feel like I need to do this with my teenagers. It's definitely like getting to the stage.
I did it with mine.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe we need YouMap for teens. Hint, hint.
It's on the docket.
Because you were saying you have somebody, you used to work with students and now you don't, but I find that high school is the time. We don't know what the heck we want, and
Yeah.
having a little guidance would really go a long way.
Yeah, YouMap is a 4-book series, so YouMap for young adults is the next one.
Nice, I love it.
It's actually the third one. Sorry, the third one.
You were on a roll. Are you allowed to tell me what the others are?
Yeah, YouMap for managers, YouMap for young adults, and then we've got a YouMap for seniors, but it's not going to be called that. It's kind of like refire.
Yeah, interesting. That I just I read this book by Chip Conley, which is about it's about reinventing yourself after age 50.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think there's a lot of books out there talking about that. It was, it's definitely, people are living longer and they want to have fulfillment and purpose.
Yep.
And so this whole retirement is not happening anymore, right?
Yeah, when people stop hiring them, before people stopped working just because they really couldn't anymore, but now what's happening is ageism is causing people to not be able to enter the labor market anymore. And so people need to have alternatives on what can they do to take control of their remaining fruitful years.
Yeah, absolutely. I've dealt with ageism on both ends of the spectrum. And believe me, in Silicon Valley, 35, it starts with ageism.
Oh my goodness, that's unreal.
35. I know by 40, they're like, well, why aren't you retired by now? Yeah, it's here in San Francisco, it's pretty bad. So,
wow.
Yeah, you go to a tech company, you think you're at high school.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the ancients after 40. But I love it. I love that you're doing 4 books. I love that you have this method. And I think that anybody would be very lucky to work with you, because you've definitely nailed it. So you're one of my favorite coaches. And
Oh,
I've never worked with you, but I just align so well with your book and all the messages you put out there. So I know that you're the legit coach. And there's so many not legit coaches out there.
some sketchy business
I know
out there.
it's kind of scary. That's why I'm doing this series, because I really want to highlight the legit coaches and direct people, guide people what they should be aspiring towards, not just, oh, hey, my brother's coaching people now. You want to come over and talk to him?
Right. I mean, if you're looking for a coach who's really going to help you be transformational, you want to find someone who's strategic. Also somebody who, obviously, like I said, is compassionate, and they're a good problem solver. How well are they solving the problems in their own life?
That's true. That's another point we didn't touch on, but obviously you want to find someone who walks the talk, because there's so much noise and so many talkers out there. But are they just regurgitating things that they've watched on YouTube? I mean, sometimes I have this feeling. I'm like, are you even certified? Like, why are you going out and preaching like a coach when you really don't know what you're talking about? You don't have any method behind that, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I think doing the coaching hub and doing more visibility towards good coaches will help. And then there's also the website, the ICF website, the International Coaches Federation, where you can search their database, and at least you have peace of mind that they have some level of credentials, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's different.
You won't find me in the ICF because I create the credential.
There you go. We're going to talk more about this, but yeah, that's why we need to highlight more people like you, because
I do have 12 certifications, so it's not like I'm not certified, just not through them.
Yeah, see, so we can talk all about credentials. We need an article about that, honestly. We need like separate, besides this interview, we need like a whole article explaining like what kind of credentials would a coach have and how do you vet them? Because look, we're talking today 101 coaching, right? This interview is all about like, what is even coaching and how do you even consider hiring a coach? But people don't know beyond that. Okay, beyond asking the questions, how do you figure out who's certified, who's not? Is there only one type of certification? Are there multiple agencies out there? Like yours is a whole different agency, but you're doing a very high level certification. So there you go. We need more. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop recording. Thank you so much for your time, and it was lovely talking to you.